Please note, before I start this video, I must give a disclaimer saying that if you don't know about Richmond CityRailfan, then I advise that you don't watch this video, but if you do know him, then maybe you can stick around and you can hear my experience of him. Please do not witch hunt anybody mentioned in this video. Thank you. I'm Atlantic Coast Railfaner / Pyrotech 4051, or Kaleb. My story today is on a certain Railfan, and I just wanted to get this out of my chest for a while. The story today is on Nicholas Clemens, or who most of you know as Richmond CityRailfan. He's a Railfaner for Richmond, Virginia, but most famously, he's the owner of the Trainz series, Rails of Highland Valley. However, while he may seem like an average Railfan, deep down, he is an idiot, and I mean an idiot. I first met Nicholas back in 2015 on Google+. I've actually heard of him before, back when he was popular in the Go anime community. At the time, he did seem like a pretty chill person, so I decided to start chatting with him and stuff, and he seemed pretty cool. Eventually in 2016, I would join his series to see what it was like. But little did I know the roller coaster I would go through on that. I first voice acted in episode 10 as an NS-9, but my persona character first appeared in Highland Valley Hobos as a cameo. He added me as Norfolk Southern SD40-2, number 3301. I only had a few minor roles, and I feel like I had a major role in Engines vs. Zombies. But, honestly, it never felt worth it for my taste. Nicholas made me completely out of character. While I did give him suggestions, he just turned them down. But I will admit that I was the one who came up with the idea in the episode When It Rains It Pours, where Homer called me a nerd. But me as a crew member in Rails Valley, it never felt the same after 2019. Nicholas changed Lily and Marie to a Norfolk Southern C40-8W and C44-9W respectively, right before Season 4 came to a close. But you see, the problem with that is, at that point, they were Amtrak P42s for 4 years, which most of the audience would have known and loved. Nicholas just knocks out the P42s out of canon and claims they're NS units the whole time just because he wishes they were NS units from the starts. That just shoves the continuity out the window. Nicholas used to have a fictional passenger train in his series known as the Richmond Limited, which Lily and Marie, as Amtrak units, have often worked on, and in my personal view, enhanced creativity. But now with Lily and Marie being NS units, what's the use of the Richmond Limited? Creativity is gone. Also, Nicholas always rushed people with lines just because he wants to get an episode out, when obviously he can be the stand-in if people can't get the lines in on time without stressing them out. But you see, Nicholas always seems to overhype the episodes. Then when it does come out, it's very underwhelming and boring, because Nicholas adds extremely long chase scenes, unnecessary parts that have nothing to do with the episodes, which could likely be due to him getting too deep into his life stories and executing them into his series. Also, there's poorly written stories, no character development, extremely unnecessary characters, minor characters being added left to right only to be dropped out a few episodes later, and every episode after 2019 and 2020 has to have a military reference because Nicholas is super obsessed with the military. But other than those, Railfan Valley is just super boring. The episodes are never worth it, and the specials are stupidly ridiculous. Nicholas constantly complains about the suspension of disbelief, yet Railfan Valley has a lot of that, like he makes Lily use drill attacks, and he also made himself throw a football at a rail cam in one short. The antagonists don't even feel like the antagonists anymore. Dave and Larry are just now those random background characters who only get 2 lines an episode, then they just screw up one little thing. As bad as it was, Run to Revenge was the only time they felt like antagonists. They actually planned something to take over Highland Valley, and it seemed as if it succeeded. If you want them to be the antagonist, then make them the antagonist. The Railfan Valley influence got so bad that nearly every Trainz series that came out after it was just a blatant copy of it. No originality, no original characters, no creativity, and so much more problems. They always overuse characters, copy Railfan Valley episodes, and a lot more. While my series, Southeast Rail Stories, had the characters from Railfan Valley, I came up with my own episodes. Nicholas is notorious for being a huge control freak over Trainz series, like he claims he's the owner of every series in existence. If anyone here doesn't know, I mentioned before, I ran a series called Southeast Rail Stories back a couple years ago, but cancelled it. The reason I canceled it is because I got super tired of Nicholas crying over everything I did with the series. For example, he got mad at me when I made Lily Maria's NSGP38-2 and a CSX GP48-2 respectively. Yet it was his suggestion. He also got mad at me when I removed Lily's ability to drill. I wanted to make my series realistic, and he got super pissed at me over realism. But my series wasn't the only one to fall for his clutches. Other series like Tales on Springfield Railroad, Greater Folkestone Rail Adventures, and so many others have fallen into his control freak habits. He always has to find something to complain about, even if it's extremely minor. Like, seriously, there'll be like one little thing in the background like that has nothing to do with the story, and Nicholas will cry about it. He won't shut up until you fix it. Word of advice to anyone listening to this, don't listen to what he says. It's your series, your rules. Also, he is infamous for claiming things are ruined, all because his friends like them. For example, I am a huge fan of the Beatles. In fact, I have no regrets saying I'm obsessed with them, and I'm proud to admit that. But then Nicholas comes up and keeps bashing me over it, yet he has an unhealthy obsession with Lily. We'll get to that shortly. Another example is that he claimed that me and two other friends of mine ruined the game Splatoon, all because we love the game. He once said that Splatoon is cringe, and I actually responded to him, how do you know if you never played it? And he said, it's bad by looking at it. That just proves he always judges without playing the game, nor reading the manga. I have a friend who's a big metal fan, and Nicholas claimed he ruined metal all because he wants to cover a metal song, and also because he has a guitar while Nicholas doesn't. Speaking of which, he got mad at me for saying I have a lot of guitars. Once on a video chat, he said he wanted to break my guitars, and I actually said fuck you to him. Maybe I should have said, break my guitars and I'll break your bones. A few people already know this, but Nicholas had the audacity to give me a death threat over a car. A friend of mine, whom Nicholas personally dislikes, just got a new car, a Ford Taurus. I thought it looked nice, so I liked the picture on Facebook. Then Nicholas came up and started yelling at me over it, and he said this to me, and let Kaleb face the firing squad for fraternizing with the enemy. If you don't know, this is him basically saying he wants to shoot me. He wants to shoot me over a freaking picture. It was at that moment I just turned my head on Nicholas, because when he gives someone a death threat, there is absolutely no going back. It should be worth mentioning that Nicholas has severely bad hatred for the franchise Pokemon. This is all because his own friends talked about it 3 or 4 years ago. Yet he also talked about it back then. Not to mention on his Hangouts profile picture is now a Pokemon character. Seriously? Just really? In 2019, his hatred for Pokemon has gotten so bad that he claimed it as a military offense, yet some people in the US military are probably big Pokemon fans. Like my uncle serves in the military and he's a big Pokemon fan. He does the same thing with Thomas the Tank Engine. It's stupid just because last year he was a big fan of Thomas. Now he hates all because of Ben the Train Kid and Daniel, or BNSF 8010. Now he treats Thomas as a military offense, yet he probably doesn't realize that most of us got into Trainz just because of Thomas. He also assumes Pokemon and Thomas are the worst franchise all because of their fandoms. Like, come on, there'll be bad fandoms everywhere. Even Mario doesn't have the perfect fandom. Not even Splatoon has a good fandom. Nothing is a good fandom. There's always going to be that bad side of a fandom, and yet Nicholas claims as if Thomas and Pokemon have the worst are like the only fandoms in the world that are bad. Another thing about his Pokemon hatred is that he claimed that Pokemon characters aren't from the series and claims them as his own individual characters. If he keeps up with that publicly, he's basically asking for a lawsuit from Nintendo and Game Freak and Creatures Inc. Mentioning the death threat again, Nicholas also threatens people who likes Pokemon. Like if someone says they like Pokemon, he will say, you need to go to Camp Lejeune. He basically says there's no cure for liking Pokemon and the only way to compete is sending them to the military. It should also be worth mentioning that someone was arguing with him over Pokemon and he actually said, I hope you get ran over I take, die and go to hell. That's worse than death rate gave me. If that doesn't raise any eyebrows, I don't know what does. Around this year, he got super pissed at the user Virginia Railfan Productions, all because Virginia Railfan Productions copyright claimed one of the Railsheim Valley episodes, and he had a reason to, because Nicholas stole one of his clips of NMW 611 without his permission. If you don't know, that breaks the Creative Commons laws. The Creative Commons laws, if you don't know, states that you are only allowed to use other people's clips with their explicit permission. So that basically makes Nicholas a lawbreaker too. And instead of accepting that the episode got taken down, he let his anger and pride consume him and nearly started World War III with Virginia Railfan Productions trying to attack him with his character alts, making the feud between the two worse. Another thing he does is that after he gets into an argument with someone he hates, he will go on their channels and bomb dislikes. In his logic, he thinks bombing dislikes will quote-unquote ruin their reputation. Speaking as his most recent bomb dislike victim, I can say Nicholas has already severely ruined his own reputation. In other words, think before you act. This shouldn't be a big surprise because everyone in the Trainz series knows about the character Yuri from the Japanese game 8 Marbles, or what Nicholas claims her name is Lily. Nicholas has a huge unhealthy obsession with her and constantly adds her in every Railfan Valley episode and also makes people add her in their series. Now listen here, this is a very bad thing because of this reason. Lily came from a manga called Takayama Aiko, and so did Marie, her sidekick. I actually read those books, and they confirm Lily's canon age is between 11 and 12 years old. That makes Nicholas a pedophile, considering he's 22. He comes in and claims Lily is 25 years old, which I'll explain in a minute. He also assumes her sexuality, because according to the manga, Lily's a lesbian, meaning she's more into girls, and it says she's also dating Marie. Nicholas comes in and claims she's a straight girl when he has no proof. Some people may know the account called Kennywood Girl 1993 on YouTube, but to burst your bubble, that's Nicholas's alt, because he's trying to shove Lily off as a real person. This makes him a weeaboo, and once again, considering Lily is 12, a former crazed person in Australia has said it best.
Getting a body pillow and masturbating to animated 13-year-old girls doesn't make you Japanese. It just makes you a borderline pedophile. And also,
Nicholas also claims that Lily never came from Takayama Aiko. Here's the thing. The character from 8 Marbles came from the Takayama Aiko books, which were popular around the time 8 Marbles was released. He treats his friends super poorly. Example, if you mention something he likes, he will immediately say you ruined it. If you manage to have a voice chat with him, he won't bother talking to his friends. Instead, he has to blast out a random show on his computer so he can focus more on that, rather than talking to his friends about his day. And even when he does talk, not only will he constantly interrupt you, he will force you to talk about the things he likes. Nothing about what you like. Example, a few years ago, Ben and I were talking about the show Charlie Brown, and then Nicholas came up and said, Charlie Brown is cancer because of you two. A recent example would be that I was on a VC with him, and he wouldn't stop playing the show McHale's Navy on his computer. And also, he also got mad at a friend of mine all because he asked him to turn it down. Aside from claiming things are ruined and not socializing with his friends, he also disrespects privacy. This is best shown in Railfan Valley. Currently he's writing a short down that's called The Rise of Degeneracy, but the whole script is about him invading privacy. He will force you to stop watching whatever he thinks is cancer. If you don't, he'll send threats. One example is that my mom posted pictures of me and my girlfriend on Facebook, and Nicholas did nothing but spam laughing emojis. Nicholas is also a huge foamer. One example is that he always constantly complains about the Norfolk Southern AC-44 C6Ms for taking away the top hats. He also hates BNSF all because of Ben the Train Kid for seeing them on rail cams, or how they were used a lot in his series. And he claims how Santa Fe is an overrated fallen flag and brags about Burlington Northern being superior just because of Ben the Train Kid. He always bases antagonists off of catches he claims are fail trails. For example, in Railfan Valley, he was going to add King Candy from Wreck-It Ralph as Norfolk Southern SD70 ACU numbered 7297. Why? Because he caught it leading a PRLX SD70 Ace and a Norfolk Southern SD60. Another example being the infamous CSX 5265. He caught that leading a Standard Cab-8 and an FERX SD40-2. In his more recent videos, you could constantly see him complaining about the C6Ms and the SD70 ACCs and wishes them to be standard cabs in the descriptions. He also claims that NS has no variety all because of the rebuilds, when in fact NS might have a little more variety than CSX. For example, if you see my recent Railfan videos, you could see that aside from C6Ms, I catch ES44 ACs, ES44 DCs, SD70 Aces, SD40-2s, -9s, and a little more. while for CSX, you get mostly AC44s, ES44AHs, and ES44DCs. Not saying anything against CSX, I'm just pointing this out. The last time I called him out, me and my friends were talking about the AC44 C6Ms, and Nicholas came in and said, "Ew, C6Ms." Nicholas also got easily offended and bashed one of my friends over his thoughts on Conrail. He said, "I find Conrail overrated," and Nicholas said, "Well, fuck you then," and started hating him over that. Sure, Conrail may be one of his favorite fallen flags, but it doesn't give him the right to bash other people's opinions on it. Where's Nicholas belong? Twitter? Nicholas constantly cries over the fact that we were born in the wrong generation, and constantly wishes he was in the 1950s. And all of this because the railroads are using PSR rebuilds, as well as his obsession with older stuff. While I'm also into older stuff, I don't have an unhealthy obsession like Nicholas. Again, to quote Filthy Frank,
music. The fact that you consider that surface as this generation shows how much of a lazy dipshit you are. If you
In conclusion, my experience with Nicholas has been extremely awful. He's generally one of the worst people I've known in my life. He's too insecure about everything, and he's just a shithead who only cares about himself. I don't want to be near him again. And for people who read this and hear this, I advise you stay away from him as well. I'm generally surprised I managed to keep up with him for all these years. And if somehow Nicholas is watching this with one of his alt accounts, I want to say this to him. Nicholas, you stay the hell away from me. I want nothing to do with you. I don't want to get into any drama with you, and I don't want to be near you again. Thank you for listening. Land Coast Railfan are out.